2600, but no, obviously a joke.
I'm actually not kidding. They are really, really old computers.
All right. Hi, Linda. So why don't we go ahead and call the meeting to order. Management Subcommittee, we're recording. And first item of business, I'll entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes from March 3rd, 2022.
So moved.
Okay.
Moved and seconded. We'll go to a roll call vote. Ken?
Mills, yes.
Carl?
Murray, yes.
Sherry?
Avery, yes.
Linda?
Woodland, yes.
And Dennis, yes. Ken, by the way, do you mind keeping the minutes tonight?
Yeah, I was just starting. That's why I wasn't responding quickly to the roll call.
Perfect. So next steps for superintendent search. Obviously, we've completed all of the days in the district. We've completed all the interviews as of last night. We had some conversation with Carolyn and Art Betancourt at NASDAQ, as well as Joe Bartulis, who he might be running a little late today, but he's planning to join us here tonight. He'll also be with us in the room on Thursday. And as we talk about deliberations, there's really 2 points of emphasis that Art and Carolyn wanted to convey, and I think it's important. One is that however we frame our deliberations, we keep it positive, right? And so we can understand that. And so we try to structure the way in which we do things with that in mind, that we're actively taking steps forward as a part of removing or eliminating people in that kind of way. So, the first point that they emphasized was is keep it positive. The second point is that any appointee coming out of this process is going to have, number one, our ability to negotiate, sign them, have them feel good about it, have us feel good about it, get off to a good start, has a lot to do with the mandate that comes from the school committee. And so, the second point here is, look, wherever it is that you start, however it is that you end, and whatever that process is in between, you, Wachusett Regional School District Committee, really ought to try and think about and do, if you can, coming out of the room with full or nearly full support of the candidate you've agreed to appoint, where you've agreed to go into negotiations with. And so, what that means is that whatever process, as we kind of go through the steps, at the end of the day, unless I'm really surprised and we land on nobody, I don't think that's where we're going. At the end of the day, we're going to land on someone. And once the process of figuring out who that someone is, there can be an opportunity for reconsideration of the vote for the purposes of making it a unanimous vote. And that gives the appointee the sentiment that the person coming in has the full support of the school committee as they come into the district. So those are the 2 key points. Let me stop there for a second and see if there was any. And so, I think that's something that perhaps we should strive to do. But let me stop there and see if there's any comments or questions about those 2 things. Ken?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very good. I would just encourage you as chair to read the room as we go around, because if we have a vote that's favorable and then we retake the vote and it's actually not unanimous, that's sort of not awesome. But I obviously it would be ideal if we could get to that point.
Yeah, it's impossible really to know. I mean, we certainly can read the room, and if it looks like it's not going to go that way, then maybe we don't do that. But I mean, even if it goes from a 15-5 vote to an 18-2 vote or an 18-3 vote, that stronger than a 15-5 vote, maybe marginally, but it might be worth it, may not be worth it. I guess we'll have to kind of see. Linda?
So I guess my question is more about how does this get communicated to the full committee? It's
Yeah.
all well and good for us, but
Yeah.
how do we make sure everybody's on the same page?
Yeah, so I will, as I have with other meetings that we've had, I'll send out a note. And again, we have to kind of go through this process here together and be on the same page. And I'll send out a note to the committee, kind of letting them know some of the tenets of what we're talking about, and do that sort of pre-processing. Joe Bartulis just sent me a note. He's in the waiting room. I don't know if Randy, are you still with us?
I am, but nothing came through.
Okay. Can you reach out to Joe and see if you can help him get into the meeting?
Yes.
All right, thanks. All right, any other thoughts, comments on at least those two pieces of advice from NASDAQ? Seeing none, then let me talk through, some of the kind of the skeleton process that, we talked about both with Joe and with NASDAQ. And so, the process, I think, aligns with what we as a school committee have done in the past, right, wrong, or indifferent. But keeping in mind that we're a little bit different, and trying to get consensus going from 4 to 1 can be sometimes a little bit of a different process with a 21-person committee than a 5 or 6 or 7-person committee. And so, when we put the agenda together, there's really two things. One is discussion of the candidates, and then a single motion to enter into the contract negotiations with a candidate to be the next superintendent. And so the objective here is to get to that motion. And so here's the process that we've talked about. We open up for discussion on candidate A, and I'll invite people, whomever wants to advocate for candidate A, to be able to speak and do that advocacy. And so we'll have that for candidate A. Next, we'll invite people who want to advocate for candidate B, candidate C, candidate D, so on and so forth. If it becomes very clearly obvious that there seems to be very heavy support for one candidate out of the 4, we may then entertain a motion to go into contract negotiation. If I were a betting person, and I have no idea, I'm going to guess that that's not the case. So if that's not the case, then what we'll do is, without objection, go into a non-binding vote for people to indicate who they believe should be the next superintendent. And we get a readout of the room. This is consistent with what we've done in the past, and what other districts, really with larger school committees, have done. Is part of their deliberations. So it looks like we got some feedback on the line. Joe Bartulis, are you there?
I am. Sorry for the feedback.
No worries. I'm glad you're able to join us. Welcome.
Thank you.
So we're just talking about the deliberation process, and advocating for candidates, and then going into going into a non-binding vote. So one of a few things can happen. If it becomes very clearly obvious based on the count that there is a clear majority for a candidate, we can go into a motion to enter into negotiations. If there are 2 and there's clear separation between candidates 2 and 3, we might then continue discussion around candidates 2 and 3, and perhaps we put that in the framework of the candidate profile. It had alpha people to provide discussion there. I think it's the same if we have 3 and there's the clear separation between 3 and 4. If all 4, there's no separation before the 4, we're going to order for taking because we're going to be there for a while. Nobody's smiling when I said that. If we have a vote that goes 6-5-5-5, it's going to take a lot more discussion. I don't know another way. And at that point, you know, maybe we start entertaining a 2-part process or something. But assuming that we're able to get down to 2 or 3 and continue discussion on 2 or 3, again, I think we would, without objection, go into a non-binding vote and see if there is a clear majority at that point, you know, and if there is, again, go into a motion to enter contract negotiations. That's the general framework. And you know, it's not, don't claim to be putting forward anything that's perfect, but something that allows us to provide feedback in a positive, constructive way, to be able to assess where we are at different points in time and be able to take appropriate action based on that. So I just said a lot. Let me invite comments or feedback. Linda?
So then just a question on the process for like the non-binding vote. Does that mean that we would do like paper ballots or something like that for any of the 4, or it would be one at a time? Or I just...
Yeah, no, I think that because I expect that we will likely have at least one remote member if anything holds the form, that it would be a roll call vote. We'd call someone's name and they would tell us who they are voting for.
Okay, so it would be like when we nominate for chair or vice chair, something like that, you would name your person?
Yeah,
versus,
so
like, yay or nay.
when we nominate, we do that. So it's a little bit different, right? So when we
Okay.
nominate, we do that openly. Traditionally, when we vote for a chair or vice chair, we do it in paper ballot unless we have remote participation. If we have remote participation, then it's just as I described.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Two quick things just to emphasize things I think you said that were important. One, I think the candidate profile, if I were in your shoes and I'm not, maybe including that as an attachment to the email that you send to the committee ahead of our deliberations might be useful, just to draw back our attention to what we'd agreed on as a committee as our rubric, right? Could be helpful in a respectful way. And I also think the emphasis on the positivity, you know, is something you're going to need to mention in the email and in person, because, you know, there's no reason to go around the table and for 20 people to say why they don't like somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're besmirching their professional reputation. This person doesn't work for us. So, you know, the Wachusett way has often been not the smoothest way. So I encourage you to lead us positively and stop us positively if we go down a bad road, particularly if it's at 12:30 or 1 o'clock in the morning. That we continue, you know, you can frame someone's positives that emphasize someone else's negatives in a passive aggressive way without besmirching someone else's reputation.
Yeah. No, I think they're both good points. And, you know, certainly, you know, the 2 points that we heard from NESDEC are things that I think are part of the tenets that we share as well as, you know, how we think this will just play out, or how we're, you know, the framework that we're planning to use. So that's not, it's clear in everyone's mind when we go into the room what we're going to do. That's what we're driving for here. Sherry?
I think that you also probably need to mention that people need to be prepared to speak for their candidate, so that they're not just off the cuff giving their impressions, but giving something with some substantial reasoning behind it, and they're prepared for it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think that there's a balance that we want to strike too, which is that there will be some people, and appropriately so, who will come in thinking, well, I think that I like so and so better than this one, and then maybe two others a far cry, but I really want to hear what my colleagues think. And so they're going to come in with an open mind, and that's part of deliberations. So yeah, I do think that as we frame the positivity, advocating for and why, and being prepared to speak to that makes sense. Other thoughts, comments?
This may be something you have down the road, but have you thought about the room and how is there space for audience, potentially even a candidate? We had a candidate come last time during our deliberations. I've only been in that library once or twice, so I just don't know exactly where we're going to be and what sort of room there is for an audience.
Yeah, my understanding is two parts to that question. My understanding is that there's room for audience. I would welcome thoughts on the instance that one of the candidates show up. I mean, I guess I'd be a little surprised. Two of them are out of state. So pretty good bet that they're not going to show up. I'd be a little surprised if the other two. I don't know if anyone wants to share thoughts on how we handle that. I haven't put much thought to it. Joe Bartulis, have you encountered scenarios where in a public deliberation one of the candidates shows up, and do you have any thoughts about the bounds of appropriateness for, we just kind of ignore it, we say, maybe you ought to think about it?
I've seen and heard it all.
Yeah.
And so this does happen rarely. I find it to be in very bad form myself.
Yeah.
But if it's an open meeting and these people have the right to be there, question whether or not you want to kind of turn them away. I think you could ask them to leave, but if ultimately they say they won't leave, that may be a bad reflection on the candidate, in my opinion. But I don't know. You could diplomatically ask the person to leave, but at the end of the day, if they flatly refuse, I think you have to let them stay.
Yeah. I think I had Linda and then Carl.
No, I was going to say similar.
Okay, Carl.
I mean, I was going to say that as chair, maybe they just don't like an understanding of what like public deliberations for this type of thing would be like, and you explain to them beforehand, like, yeah, we're just deliberating. It's open to the public. Anyone can be here. Even if you were to be selected, it's not like you're going to be signing a contract right here and right now. So, if they show up, you can make it clear that like it's open to the public. We're doing it, but there's not really anything to be gained by you being here, but
right,
welcome to be here.
Right. Ken?
Sorry, just one last process question. So Isabella and Kenichi, are they going to be allowed to participate in our deliberations with advocate?
Yeah, I think so. They just, we're not going to include them in the vote, obviously, and I wouldn't include them in the non-binding vote either. But if they have an opinion to offer, I think it's appropriate to allow them to offer it. That's my sense. If somebody feels differently, let me know.
I agree. You just might want to let them know, just so they feel welcomed.
Yeah, no, they've been corresponding. They're definitely interested and active. Carl?
And on the same note, is there public comment before this?
No. No, I mean, we're giving people the opportunity to provide feedback forms, and I think that's probably the most efficient way to process community input to the full school committee. Sherry and Linda?
Is this an appropriate time to speak to the feedback forms?
Well, let's close up. If there's any other discussion about deliberations, and then we can go to feedback forms. Anyone else have a comment on deliberations? If not, then let's go to feedback form, Sherry.
I've heard from a few teachers that they're not comfortable giving their feedback because of the format of the form where it's asking for their name and their address for that matter. And it specifically says that these forms can be made public. They feel like they can't give an honest review of someone who will be their boss.
Yeah, so in the note that's going out tonight with the release of the videos, the note to the staff is going to indicate that we're going to keep all responses in confidence, and we remove the part of the form that said that this information is going to be made public. So, you know, it's kind of in between, because we've heard both ways. We've heard that, boy, you know, such and such has been around, and we know that they've met all the candidates. We'd love to hear from that person. And of course, if they volunteer information, great. If they don't, they don't. But you know, maybe there's a pretty good chance that you wouldn't even know that that person has submitted anything if they're anonymous. So this is, I think, if we maintain this in confidence, as we say, then hopefully people feel better about providing their feedback. Linda.
I don't know if I've missed this, or I know I've missed this. What is the deadline for submitting the feedback, and when can the committee expect to see the results?
Yeah, so that's a little bit of a moving target. We originally put it out there at Wednesday at 5 o'clock. Given that we're getting the videos out a little later, I checked with NESDEC right before this call, and I mean, you know, they can extend it as late as we want to, but we also need that second part of your question, right? Which is we need to be able to take some time and review it. So we modified it, and the email will go out tonight, but it's Wednesday at 8 o'clock. And, you know, within sometime shortly thereafter, that information should be put on a shared drive for everyone to access. Again, trying to balance giving people an opportunity if they want to provide feedback and giving everyone an opportunity to be able to read it. Any other thoughts or comments before I talk about contracts or contract? So then the last thing, at least that I had planned to talk about, was, you know, obviously our motion is going to be to enter into contract negotiations with somebody. You know, one of the things that NESDEC, by the way, thought would be good form is for, before we adjourn, after we take our motion, but before we adjourn, to call a recess and call that person and let them hear from us that they've been selected. It sounds like a nice gesture to do. Entering in the contract negotiations, you know, I think, again, we would look to our legal subcommittee, Sherry, to work with Joe and, you know, I think start to pull together, in all likelihood, you know, I think a lot of times the way that this happens is we enter in the contract negotiations, but we share the first form. So whatever the iterations are, whatever the negotiations are, they happen based on the form that we start with. And then once that seems to be some agreement in principle, we'll bring that to the full committee to ratify. Sherry and then Ken.
So where is that form starting? Is that form starting in legal and legal is bringing it to the full committee? Or is...
Yeah, so I think that it starts with working with Joe Bartulis and you opening up negotiations with whomever is selected.
Okay.
Ken?
Two separate comments. One, I've been on this committee long enough to always think about the worst case scenario. So calling the person seems awesome. The person telling us no on that phone call, it gives me a pause of a little bit of agita, but I just say that almost joking, but not 100%.
So I guess, Ken, I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. I'd rather know right then and there.
Yeah.
Because we have the gangs all together, and we all have the same information at the same time. So if we need to go to next choice, do it right then and there.
Yeah, I imagine that a person would have the grace to be like, "Oh, that's great news. We'll look forward to hearing from you more." But I just, worst case scenario can happen.
Right.
The other thing about the contract, just to throw a couple of thoughts out there, having been involved with it last time, the MA, oh geez, Glenn Kuchar's group, MASC, they will provide us on confidence their database of superintendent salaries, right? So that might be something that we want to get. And you may want to have an executive session sooner than later for legal to discuss frameworks of a contract, in terms of just having an agenda, posting and whatnot, just so you think about like what's on Daryl's contract that's typical, what's on Daryl's contract that might be unattractive, just before we send things out, to someone we're trying to negotiate with. So anyway, I just
I hear you, and I think that that's work that legal would do in executive session. Joe, I know has some ideas on what a base framework or a template or a starting point for a contract would look like. Carolyn and NESDEC has also collected information on salary ranges from each candidate. So we have a place to start from. Joe, you were lighting up there. I'm not sure if you had something you wanted to.
Oh no, I was just. I apologize for that, but no, I was going to say that I think all your instincts are good. To the extent that you have salary ranges from Carolyn and NESDEC, that might be helpful, of course. And then I'm happy to meet with legal sub and kind of walk them through the common elements in these contracts. We can then discuss things we like or don't like with the kind of the contract templates that we can present. So I'm happy to assist with that.
Yeah, and every candidate is going to be a slight variation, right? There's going to be certain things that they're going to look for in a contract based on the situation that they're coming from or based on their current situation. And so, it really not really appropriate to talk about that obviously until we've narrowed down onto somebody. But I think we'll have a framework for that. And the other thing is we're going to want to move that process pretty quickly. So, within a week, 2 weeks tops, I think we're going to want to have that buttoned up.
You bet.
Any other thoughts, comments, questions? Coming down the home stretch, are we feeling good? Okay. Smiles and head nods, I'll take it.
Ask me at 1 o'clock in the morning on Friday.
Maybe we should create some kind of incentive, like somebody buys the first round of cocktails and soft drinks if we get done within an hour. I don't know. It is St. Patrick's Day. Could happen. We'll see. We'll see what kind of incentives we can create.
Yeah, I mean, since St. Patrick's Day ends at midnight, I guess there is an incentive there to get it done.
Yeah. Let's do better than 1 a.m. I mean, look, at the end of the day, in all seriousness, we want to do it right. Hopefully, we have a good process, as we talked about, to continue to speak positively, to assess and react during the deliberations, and if we need to call an audible, we'll call an audible. But I'm hopeful that we'll get out of there and we won't be in a 6-5-5-5, because at that point we might need to bring drinks in. Linda.
It just left my brain. I'm so sorry. It was about deliberations. I'll see if I can get it back. I'm sorry.
All right. I can only tap dance around silence for so long.
Got it.
All right, you got it. Go ahead.
I'm so sorry about that. So the candidate profile, just going back to that, we had talked about using it as a guide, but not a rubric. do I have that right as it's not like a checklist, right? But
No.
it should be used as a guide. So I don't know if that,
No, I mean, I think the spirit of the thing is that, we have this candidate profile to remind us of the values that we've heard in the community when we went through a very intensive community feedback process. And to the extent that that can inform, a candidate that tends to exhibit more of those qualities, that's information that's worth bringing forward.
I was just thinking in terms of reminding the committee of how to use
and
that, right?
I think the
Yeah.
way that I would remind them is probably just in that way. Anyone else? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. We'll go to a roll call vote. Linda,
Woodland, yes?
Sherry,
Faber, yes.
Ken.
Yes.
I have to open a window to see who else is here. I think I saw Christina.
Smith, yes.
Am I missing somebody else?
Altmar, yes.
More, thank you. And Dennis, yes. Am I missing anybody? Don't think so. All right, we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone. There'll be a note coming out from me in the next 24 hours, and in about 48 hours, we'll see each other in Rutland. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You too.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Joe.